divide. No sense of family, says my holy corporate wisdom. I believe in the profits of consumerism. We used to visit the Joneses when I was 10. 200 people in this building, not a one of them, not a care in the world.
Good morning and welcome to HESN Football Podcast number 23. I'm Dan Mooney alongside the venerable Jesse Card and producer Steve. Kyle Ball is here. We're going to talk to Gowan Harding about the Quebec Bowl and how minor football is becoming interprovincial, as it were, by and large, so to speak.
How exciting is this? I mean, it is really cool to finally be able to talk about this stuff publicly. And we put out the power rankings, which is going to be another segment where Kyle comes on and talks about that a little bit more in detail. And but we put that out last night, and like the Quebec League's already sharing it. It's on the Facebook page. People are commenting like, why is this team here? Why is that team there? It's just really good to be able to create so much dialogue, and people are talking about the game of football. So it's great.
Tough week in Canada for Canadian icons. Bad news this morning. Lead singer of the Tragically Hip, Gord Downie, succumbing to brain cancer. And boy, what a legacy he has left with all of the music that the Hip has produced over, the last 25 years, 26 years, I think, when they first really came to prominence. 26 years ago is a long time for a band to sustain itself. Gord Downie did it, and the big tour last year where, you could see that his health was declining. He had the teleprompters with him and just doing everything they possibly could to make it easier for him. Quite a legacy. Absolutely,
and I think he rallied really hard for that tour. I heard from all accounts, people that went, that it was phenomenal, and they really put on a great show. I don't know how many dates they did, but I think it was coast to coast, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's really sad.
Coast to coast on CBC, and they did it from the K-Rock Center in Kingston.
Right. Yeah, I have friends that live in Kingston that were there, and it's sad for sure. I was driving in this morning into the office, and the Shea 106 have decided to play all Tragically Hip all day and talk about him and just celebrate the guy's life, right? I mean, he was just a band from Kingston that did well.
Indeed. And John Dunsworth passed away at the age of 71. And for those of you who may not know who John Dunsworth is, if you are a fan of the Trailer Park Boys, John Dunsworth was Jim Leahy.
Oh, classic. Love that guy.
Jesse and I are just rehearsing for a community theater play at the Blandford Recreation Center.
Now, are you a big fan of Trailer Park Boys?
I remember when it was at the height of its popularity, I would race home on Sunday nights to get home for 9 o'clock to catch them on Showcase.
Oh, me too. I look back. That was my second, third, and fourth year university was dedicated to watching that with my roommates. And for a show that came out of it was Nova Scotia, was
Mm-hmm.
it? With not a crazy budget at all, and
started on YouTube.
A lot of the guys that were in that show weren't wouldn't classify themselves as real actors. They were just giving it a go. And wasn't it who's the one famous Canadian that had a show before that? Jonavision, right?
Jonathan Torrens, who played J-Rock in the show.
J-Rock. but they did really well, and it was really well written. They kept that thing going for 10 seasons?
I think so, and a couple of movies.
Yeah,
couple of feature films. So the
I don't know if you do it. Leahy's gone, and sometimes you just got to pack it in. It makes me think of, artists when they just realize that it's just time to pack it in. Like,
that being said, do the Tragically Hip tour again without Gord. Is it the same?
I mean, it certainly wouldn't be the same without Gord. I saw the Doors of the 21st Century sometime in Winnipeg many years ago, and they had the lead singer from The Cure doing Jim Morrison.
Robert Smith.
Who is it?
Robert Smith.
Robert Smith. And, I mean, he did a great job. I think he, studied and he tried to...
Who did he play for again, sorry?
Jim Morrison.
Really?
Yeah, they had all the other members of the Doors. And
Ray Manzarek, John Densmore, and Robbie Krieger.
Right. And, I mean, it was good, and they're playing the songs that you love, but it's, you're kind of watching... It's not happening organically in the time that it was created, and you're aware of that when you're doing it. So I think with the Hip, it would be the same thing. It would be kind of like a tribute cover band almost. Like, it's not them creating the music together at the time. It's What do you think, Steve?
So, would you like me to tell your story? Steve started. His story basically includes the Tragically Hip lead guitarist Rob Baker asked Steve to tape the program for them because they wanted their movie. So, following the concert, worry about that stuff. So anyway, we're talking about people substituting for Jim Morrison. Gowan is the lead singer for Styx now as they're touring. And I'm going to segue into Gowan Harding a little bit later and talk about the Quebec Bowl.
You're not singing for Styx, are you?
No, he won't be singing for Styx because he just can't hit those high notes. But we're going to talk some football. Red Blacks' big win over the Saskatchewan Roughriders last Friday night, 33-32 in the final minute. Wow. It's nice. It's kind of poetic justice, don't you think, Jesse, that after the Red Blacks have lost so many close ones this year that they finally get a win?
It's about if that's the luck we're going to get, bring it on because it's the time when we need it. Like, forget the rest of the regular season. If we can get some of those close games to go our way at this point, we could be in the Grey Cup still. And, I mean, how awesome would that be to have the Red Blacks at home?
Guaranteed to host a playoff game again for the third straight year. So, which is great. Ottawa hadn't had playoff football in the other incarnations of their CFL franchise for so long. And now, the first 3 years, or 3 of the first 4 years that the Red Blacks are back in the CFL, we got a playoff game in the nation's capital.
Beautiful, beautiful. It's fantastic. I mean, I haven't been able to go to too many games this year. I sold 50-50 at a couple, and I've been trying to follow it. You know, I in the past the app has been my savior. I go and I'll recap the little, you know, CFL will put out about a 2-minute recap of every game, and I'll try to watch that just to keep up to what's happening. But this summer was just crazy for me, and I wasn't able to watch a whole lot of Red Blacks football. But I'm getting back into it right at the right time. And the CFL, the one thing I'll say about the CFL is the playoffs are amazing, and the Grey Cup's usually a good game. You can't say the same for NFL all the time.
I wasn't going to say it.
Yeah.
But big construction going on at TD Place, getting the place ready for the Grey Cup. They've about halfway through the stands in the east end zone, and from what I'm told, there will be stands in the west end zone as well to bring the total to 36,000, which is slightly under what they did in 2004 when Ottawa hosted the Grey Cup. They had 51,000 there that day.
Wow.
So ticket prices are going to be at a premium, and from what I'm told, there aren't that many tickets left for the Grey Cup already. So Ottawa has already put on a successful Grey Cup pageant, as it were, this season before the game's even played. And what a week! What a week they got planned for Grey Cup week. I remember when I was a kid, 1967, when Ottawa hosted the Grey Cup. Hamilton and Saskatchewan in that game. Hamilton ended up winning 24-1. The 1 point that Saskatchewan got was an Alan Ford single. The field was frozen at Lansdowne Park, and you got to remember that's when they had natural turf surface at Lansdowne, and from what I'm told, the players were wearing broom ball shoes because the field was so frozen.
Yeah.
I remember going to the Grey Cup parade. I was 6 years old, and we were freezing, standing out on the street, waiting to see Colonel Sanders.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
really?
he was in the parade.
No kidding.
Yeah.
All right, was he wearing his getup?
Yes, he was.
All right.
No doubt he had long johns underneath his Colonel getup.
Oh, yeah, I bet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Flannel all the way, I imagine. But one thing about that guy I've heard, he's always brought up in like business success stories where his persistence. Apparently, he had this recipe, the KFC chicken recipe, and
11 different herbs and spices.
he peddled that to like over 10,000 restaurants that all turned him down. He kept going, and one said, "We'll do it, but we want to like own the whole recipe." That turned into KFC.
He died in Toronto.
Is that right?
He died in Toronto. He sold off his interest in the American part of KFC and moved to Toronto to develop KFC brand in Canada, and he ended up dying here.
Really?
Yeah.
See, I always wondered, like, do you think that Colonel Sanders and the Wendy's girl, like, they all hang out in a room, and Ronald McDonald, do they?
It's
like,
interesting
party?
that you mention that because I am a wealth of absolutely useless information. Dave Thomas, who started Wendy's, got his start in the KFC franchises in the States and built the Wendy's brand after learning the business from Colonel Sanders.
Really? Okay, so yeah, there you go. Now, how did you acquire that information?
I watch a lot of documentaries.
Yeah, BBC.
Well, BBC, CBS, TBS, anything. And you know, one of the really nice things about YouTube is the fact that you can watch anything you want, and there's documentaries galore on YouTube.
YouTube, what is that going to be like? If we fast forward 100 years, when kids read about what YouTube was and what it did for the world. I mean, it's going to be probably more influential than the printing press.
Not to mention what it's doing for HESN, because we're broadcasting on YouTube as we speak.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, they keep adding features. Originally, I started with Vimeo. I thought it was a better platform and it was better HD quality. But you can't really build the audience the way that YouTube gives you the tools to. And we've switched over about a little bit over a year ago, and we're at 12. I think I looked this morning. We're at 1,200 and change subscribers that get pinged when we go live. So it's a very powerful platform.
Hate to bring up the concussion issue once again, but their big story in Nova Scotia this week, one high school football game, 9 concussions. They had to stop the game because it was 35-0, and teams are running out of players. Now the Nova Scotia government is getting involved in this specific case because of the fact that 9 players were diagnosed with concussion symptoms after that football game.
Yeah.
Is that going to hurt our sport?
You know what? I didn't really have a time to look into that story and read it, but from what I did read, the opponent coach, the team that they were playing, said that they were just simply not prepared. They were poorly coached. They hadn't practiced safe tackling. There's a lot of factors. I don't really have any interest in getting involved with it because I think a lot of people try to jump on this concussion issue and talk about it and make it bigger than it is. So let's move on.
There you go. You've heard right from the horse's mouth. So we're not going to talk about that, but we are going to talk about things heating up. As the weather cools down in October, it's football season now. So we've got a lot of races in the NCAFA. We've got CFL. We've got university football heating up, and that's something that's close to your heart.
Absolutely. I mean, I saw, I think Carleton beat U of T this weekend. Ottawa U looks to be pretty strong. I think they could do some damage in the playoffs. Obviously, Western's undefeated. I've said this before. I think Western they're going to choke. I say it publicly. I just think that they just repeatedly don't get the job done. But McMaster's right on their heels, and Guelph just won a big game against Laurier. So super competitive in the OUA. Haven't really checked out the RSCQ.
Ottawa beat Waterloo last weekend, or was it Queens?
Waterloo.
Okay.
Yeah, and the Warriors have had a real comeback turnaround season. They're competitive and relative in the OUA for the first time in probably 20 years or so. A player that I played with at McMaster was our quarterback until Adam Archibald came from Frontenac and Kingston to become the number one guy there. But John went on to coach with McMaster for many years, won a Vanier in 2011. He joined the Waterloo staff, and I think part of it is having some winning culture around Batoya, and it's certainly worked. It's good to see, and they've got some slick-looking uniforms. They look good out there.
How important is that to have that, to bring in somebody with that winning attitude to a program where the season is so short? They only play 8 games.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's important in a lot of things. I think leadership and also just having somebody with a clear vision of and being able to rally people around a common vision. Steve and I were just talking about this the other day. Goal setting has been said to be the most important skill in life and success. And there's not actually, if you think about it, there's not one course throughout the time that we go to school, from kindergarten through to university, that actually is mandatory goal setting course. I think it's crazy. And I think when you talk about sports, which this show is all about football, having a coach that comes in and sets some clear goals and
is it important to set attainable goals or to reach for the sky?
Well, the literature that I've read is about setting them as high as you can, but then also breaking them down into mini goals that are realistic and attainable. Because sometimes if you set a goal that's too far out, you'll just get bored of it because you don't see any kind of movement towards it. That's tangible signs that you're getting closer to that. So they say to break those little goals down, but I think the leadership and having guys that have had success and won a Vanier, being around there, they have a different mindset. They know it's possible, and when they set that goal and they say, oh yeah, we've done it before, it's possible, people listen. And sometimes if you come from a program that's lost for 20 years, you can't shake that very easily. No matter how much you tell yourself, well, we have the possibility of winning a Vanier.
The motivation might be as simple as just seeing a ring.
Yep. Yeah, if you're into the jewelry, then
Well, I mean, it's something that nobody will be able to take away from you for the rest of your life. And in 1975 or 73-74 NHL season, going into Game 6 of the final between the Boston Bruins and the Philadelphia Flyers, Fred Shero, who was then the coach of the Flyers, wrote on the whiteboard in their dressing room, "Win today, and we walk together forever."
I like it. That's epic. If that doesn't rattle your bones and get you excited as a player, then the cliche line is, "I don't know what will." But It's true. You know, I would have loved to win a Vanier. I was one game away 2 years in a row, and
Yates Cup.
yeah, we in '02 we beat Queens, and then we lost to St. Mary's, and that was definitely a winnable game.
Was that the UTEC Bowl or the Yates?
I think the UTEC was we hosted St. Mary's in
Okay.
'02. They came, and it was a frigid day, and that was my first year, and I saw Kojo Edu, who was a record-breaking running back for Mac back in the day. He was in his final year. He sustained like a broken leg at a movie shoot or something, but he was invited to the Shrine Bowl. People were talking about NFL for this guy, and he was basically out the whole year, but he came back for that game, and we got to see Kojo play in real life. And he stepped in as a fullback for Jesse Lumsden, who was in his second year at that time. And watching those guys,
What a
play,
beast!
I honestly, like, when I stepped into university football and I watched Kojo block for Jesse Lumsden, I was like, and it was Benaventura, the middle linebacker for St. Mary's at the time, went on, played in CFL for a long time. Those guys meeting in the hole, I was like, okay, this is big boy, this is adult football now. You know, like
Right.
for the first time I looked at it and I said, you know, this is the real deal. You know, so Tyler McLaren, who started HESN with me many years ago, he said that in training camp, the first time that Kojo took a handoff from him because he was a quarterback, he was getting reps. Kojo almost ripped his arm out of his socket when he took the ball. You know, so university football in Canada is great. It's no joke.
And things are heating up now. Just as we speak, October, they play their game after the Grey Cup. Their Vanier Cup. The Vanier Cup is a week after the Grey Cup. Used to play it.
Yeah, same day. Skydome.
Not the same day.
Oh,
the day before.
Yeah. I like that format in Toronto with the Skydome when they hosted the Vanier there. I think it was important for them to move it around, though. I like that decision where they've started to bid out the Vanier. And last year that 2 years ago, UBC won in Laval, and that looked like the production value of that Vanier Cup to me was like, it's arrived. Like that game is on par with the NFL and CFL right now.
You think so?
Well, I mean, maybe not the NFL, like that's a stretch, but they had everything. They had a halftime band play. They had the lights. They had the podium. The production value on, I think it was CTV or whoever was doing it, Global was doing the production. They had ex-CIS players like Andy Beckler and some of the guys that used to be on the Score. They're there reporting on the game, and that's what I want to see as an OUA and a university like alumni and fan. I want to see guys that played in the game, some of these names being involved in the production, and guys that like live and breathe and bleed OUA football. I want to see that. You
talked about the success that the University of Ottawa is having this season. What happened to Carleton?
Well, I mean, it's tough. It's a very competitive division. So I think everyone,
Great Panda.
I think everyone assumed that like Carleton year 1 would be bad. Year 2 they'd be a little bit better. They'd make the playoffs. Year 3 they'd win a Yates Cup in 4 or 5. I mean, why did we really think that was a natural progression? Like, you didn't think that was it going to be A to B, C to D, like, or is there going to be a year or two that they flop? And I think we're seeing just the loss of Jesse Mills, their quarterback.
Well, it's the skill positions.
Nate Bahar, who is by far like one of the most electrifying and consistent players in the OUA for many years, and Tunde Aleki. Like, even just those 3 guys, and we could go on and name about 10 other guys they lost that were impact players.
Nathaniel Hamlin.
Yeah, so his brother plays in the league, and he's really good.
Arthur,
yeah.
Well, their dad, Jeff, was football coach at my high school and my gym teacher at Rideau High School in the 70s. He is a former CFLer as well. He played at North Carolina. He's a Tar Heel. Yep. And then he played a couple of seasons in Winnipeg before he became an Nepean police officer,
nice.
of all things, and didn't like that. So got into the teaching profession and retired after a 28 or 29-year career as the head football coach and phys ed department head at Gloucester High School.
Good for him. Right on.
Yeah, good guy too.
Is he still around? And he's
coaching at St. FX.
He's coaching, okay.
Yeah, he was coaching Arthur at St. FX in the high school ranks, and Arthur opted to play high school instead of in CAFA. Now, that was a year ago, so I don't know whether or not...
I don't know where he is right now. It would be fun to see him play, but, you know...
And there's a kid that played AAA hockey, and after Bantam, major Bantam, he decided, I don't want to play hockey anymore. I want to concentrate on football. I guess he saw his big brother Nate doing some really good stuff and wanted to emulate him.
For sure. I mean, it would be great. I mean, this year is a good year to be playing. I feel bad for all the kids that decided to play high school because we have been able to set up something pretty special that we're going to be talking about here as soon as we want to talk about this. You know, I guess you know the kids have the opportunity to play in this bowl game. So the bowl games, we're going to bring Gowan on, I think, to talk a little bit about this because he was the architect of this this merger, if you will, with NCAFA and 3 of the leagues in Montreal. And the kids, I mean, just putting these guys in the power rankings now and having some new blood, you can just feel the excitement. It's palpable out there that people are really interested in the fact that you got some new players, new teams, new egos involved in football, and it's going to be an exciting weekend when we get to see what Ottawa is made of and see the caliber of football in Quebec, which, you know, all my life I've been being told, and I've experienced it, when you play teams from Montreal, they are good football teams.
What a great lead-in. What a great lead-in to our next segment. We're going to take a break. But when we come back, we'll talk to Gowan Harding about the Quebec Bowl in each and every division of NCAFA. And it certainly lends itself, both provinces' football programs, lending itself to, I guess, just more incentive to succeed. And we'll talk to Gowan about that, as well as a few hundred other things when we come back. You're watching HESN's Football Podcast, number 23, right here on the House Edge Sports Network. Welcome back to HESN Football Podcast number 23. Dan Mooney, Jesse Card, Steve Johnston, Kyle Ball, and a host of others, all of our HESN crew here for the podcast. We talked about football and CAFA and the Quebec Bowl before the break, and we're going to talk about it at length now. It really is a unique program, indigenous to only in CAFA and Quebec. Interprovincially, Ontario versus Quebec at the minor football level is a brand new novel concept, and Gowan Harding, the Vice President of Programming for the National Capital Amateur Football Association, joins us. Gowan, thanks so much for being on the podcast.
I got to say, the first time I came on this, it was a wake-up call for me because I've been going to the gym 4 times a week because I swear to God I looked like I weighed 400 pounds.
I didn't think so.
Oh, I did.
Well, the camera
I did.
does add a little.
It does add, so I've been going a good life.
Okay.
So I'm getting into shape, but thanks to this show.
Okay.
See how it changes lives?
That's good to know.
It changes, our podcast changes lives.
So what do you got going? The elliptical? What do you?
I do 4 different things. I do a little bit of yoga. I do the body pump. I do the spin, and I do a day on my own.
Oh, you got to do the hot yoga. Apparently,
hot yoga's good?
Apparently,
Okay.
it's 115 degrees in the room.
I love it.
So you're bound to sweat some of it off.
Some of it out. I know.
Let's
Okay.
Get the toxins out. Yeah.
Exactly. So anyway, this show, I'm back, and hopefully by about 3 years, I'll actually be in shape.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, it won't be 115 degrees outside when Ontario and Quebec teams play for the Quebec Bowl Championships. And Gowan, you're instrumental in bringing this to NCAFA. What an opportunity for these kids.
Listen, it's going to be huge. We've been talking about that. I think people in Montreal now, we had to be quiet about it because you don't want to say that something's going to happen and it doesn't end up happening. But we've been talking about this with the league officials over there since January. Even before January, we had kind of ideas. So we've been negotiating rules, where we're going to play the games, players' eligibility. So we have some really nice documents. But I think they're getting excited, and I hope that everyone in the CAFA gets excited because this really is 2 cities.
I'm pumped.
I've been involved with the Vikings in those Quebec leagues. I know the Montreal Regional Football League, which is the Pee Wee team, the Quebec Bantam League team, and the Quebec Midget League. These are quality organizations. And the thing is they share the same sort of problems we share.
Right.
And this is what we're doing. We're expanding our base. We're getting stronger. They're getting stronger. And I think when the coaches come down to see our facilities, and it's going to be a continuous dialogue. I'm thinking this is like the Summit Series 72.
Wow.
No one really understands what the other guy has to offer. But in retrospect, when you look at 72, we had a lot in common, right? We had the hockey and we wanted to do better. How much did Canadians learn from the Russians in our game?
Right.
It changed. They learned a lot from us. So to me, this is going to be great. Like the rankings, I saw the rankings, and I kind of went, oh my God, how are people going to respond to this? But here's the deal. We'll know at game day. Right?
Yeah, well, for sure.
But we can't just be the game. This has got to be like a 4 or 5 year relationship, and hopefully a 20-year relationship.
Putting this together must have, you mentioned you've been working on this since January.
Yeah.
It must have been a logistical nightmare. What were some of the hurdles that you had to overcome in order to get this thing to fruition?
The big hurdle, and it's a legitimate concern on the part of the Montreal Regional Football League. They have weights in their league where if you're at Pee Wee and you weigh over a certain amount of weight, I forget what it is.
Used to have it in NCAFA
exactly,
too.
and we got rid of it 10 years ago. But in Quebec, let's say you weigh over X amount of pounds, you can only play O-line. So it wasn't about moving kids up there, but we don't have that. And that was a real no-go for us because we didn't want to have kids who had been playing D-line all season long to be told, well, you're overweight.
Right.
And to me, that's a huge stigma. I remember the days where we used to have kids running on garbage bags before we went down to the arena to weigh them.
135 pounds, 130 pounds was the weight limit in Pee Wee when I played in the 70s, and they gave you 5 pounds grace.
Okay, right. So we got rid of that, and our game is stronger and better. We're not pushing these kids away. If I was playing senior ball, I'd probably have to lose some weight right now. But
you are.
I am losing weight.
You got a little yoga.
But that's no good. That's no good to a 12-year-old.
No.
We
No.
push them away because, especially our sport needs those big boys, right?
Well, and I think our society has gotten a lot more sensitive in the last 10 years
About
with
it.
social media and
Yeah.
sharing and the visibility that people's lives
So-
they're sharing their lives online now. You can't have kids running in garbage bags.
And that was a huge concern for them, and legitimately so, because it's an unknown.
Yeah.
They were worried that we would have that 170, 185-pound quarterback, running back combo and all. It's pound, 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 which, we sometimes happen in our league, right? But most teams don't do it. And so they were worried. So that was a big concern that we had to go down and sort of, take the
Yeah.
fear out of it.
Right.
And so now they're coming down and they're going to see it. And hopefully maybe they learn something from us. They also play 4-down football. There's no convening. Kids can play both ways. So for the championship game, we said, okay, well, we're not bringing weights in, but we'll play the rest of your rules. So for all the coaches out there, it's going to be 4-down football, nose to nose on the line.
No 1 yard.
No 1 yard. The rest of the rules are the same, except for at Pee Wee and Bantam. In those first 3 downs, you have to pass once in your first three threes. If you don't, the ball is stopped and you come back 5 yards.
Oh, it's a penalty if you don't
what
throw.
What they're doing, which we don't really do, is they're encouraging quarterbacks. They're growing slot backs. They're growing tight ends.
I like it.
They're growing everybody. They're growing the game because you have to pass, and that starts in their league at Tyke, Mosquito, Pee Wee, and Bantam.
Right.
Now the only section is you got to get into real detail, right? Because they've been doing it for a long time. Once you get into the red zone, that you can do anything you want.
Right.
Now.
Right.
So this is going to be a little bit of a learning curve for us, which is, our coaches, hopefully you realize 3-down football, 4-down football is a little different.
Right.
So you can't just run the same playbook.
Well, I think it also I look at this kind of, whoever wins the Ottawa City Championship in those
Yeah.
divisions and goes on, I think NCAFA should give them all the support that they need, including maybe a guy in the OC's ear to say, remember, you got to pass.
You got to pass, right? You got to be remembered. And so I'm looking forward to maybe we'll learn some things, because I know convening is really a contentious issue in our league.
Yeah.
It's always a problem. Mm-hmm. And I'm a president, so I'm only one voice. So this is from me as a president right now. And all I'm saying is I don't like the idea that I have to police the other team to make sure they get their kids in. That should be up to that organization and those groups of parents.
But will you? In the event that they don't comply with the rules, would you police it?
Well, I'm saying I don't. I don't think I've ever heard of a game in my 15 years in the CAFA being overturned over a convening issue. It's really meant to keep the spirit of the game.
True.
Right? It's meant to keep people honest and to keep coaches grounded in that they should be playing all of their players.
Right.
That being said, how competitive will the UNCAFA teams be against Quebec?
Well, put it this way. So we took a Pee Wee team down to the MRFL, I think 5 years ago. We were probably a 6-2 NCAFA team. We went through that season. We ended up 3-7.
Wow.
So I'm not saying that we would have been 3-7 in NCAFA or 7-3 in NCAFA. The reality is I've seen both. I've seen the Bantam. My son played Bantam. My other son played Midget. We're in for some good games. I mean, this is, like I said, this is Russia, Canada. Like, we better not underestimate them.
When and where is this?
This is November 19th at Carleton University.
Which is
You
a
got
Sunday.
Carleton.
Which is a Sunday.
Right.
Yeah, which is a Carleton. So we've got Carleton University. There's a $5 admission charge to help cover some of the costs. I think the games start around 2 o'clock. It's going to be a fantastic day of football.
In all 5 divisions?
3 divisions.
3 divisions.
Three
So-
divisions.
Pee Wee, Bantam, Midget.
Okay.
There was talk about Mosquito, and this is negotiations, right?
Right.
But they were very worried about the weight at Mosquito, so they voted not to bring the Mosquitoes in, even though some of their member clubs wanted to do it. So maybe we're going to organize something on the side between someone down there who wants to do it and one of our clubs that wants to do it, just to be involved. The only problem is the date, the 18th. So we finish, I think we have a 2-week layover.
Right.
Because they don't have their provincial championship.
Which we should talk about. That could be a big advantage
'Cause we get to
for
go-
the NCAFA clubs.
They get
They'll
to go
be able
down.
to heal up.
Heal up, maybe get some film work done on the opponent.
Their
If they're
championships-
exchanging film.
Yeah, their
The
championship
plan is
games.
to everyone gets everything.
Their championship games are the week before. So I think any team that is going to the game better send some coaches down to Montreal and to take a look, because My son, who went on to play CIS for a year, he learned how to watch game films with Sun Youth. He learned in that league. They had a 2-hour Friday night session with game film. I mean, his coach played in the CFL. I mean, we're talking about great staffs, great staffs.
Oh, yeah. Well, you took me through there when we went to Montreal a couple weeks ago. The facility is right out of Rocky 3, where he's training and he takes everything back to the ghetto. It's awesome. And they've got a wall of fame with all the players that have come through there that have either gone to the CFL, the NFL in some cases, or the NCAA or CIS. It's impressive. It's inspiring to see. And that stuff's important for kids to have those facilities and those organizations to, give these kids. We were talking about goal setting earlier. If you know it's possible, some kids just like the light bulb goes off in their head and they set themselves on a trajectory to go conquer the world. And listen, I mean, it's awesome.
We all know coaches, right? If I play against a great team and there's 3 or 4 players on that, and I'm talking to a CEGEP coach, if I'm from Montreal, and I go, you got to see these guys from Ottawa. There's number 12, number 15, number 16, and I know our coaches are going to be doing the same. Was Carleton in Ottawa. Hey, there's guys in Montreal, man. You got to see this quarterback.
More visibility, more opportunity.
And it's going to be big, and I'm hoping that we get a lot of university coaches out because most of these teams should be done. And they can come out, they can watch the games. And this is all about, again, exposability, creating excitement. I'm looking forward to the work you guys are going to do, pumping that out.
Well, that's it. Like if we'd love, obviously, Ottawa, you and Carleton will be there. Maybe Pat Sheehan from Queens will be there. He's always good at coming to these events. But we're going to, like we did with the Midget Showcase, we're going to send out information about where to see these kids play and the live broadcast. We're going to have Carleton, so we're going to have the proper facility to be able to run the broadcast. It's really just good all around that what's happening here, and my hat's off to you for really driving this thing.
Well, listen, I know both sides, and I know, like I said, we both leagues or multiple leagues face the same problems. We face high school ball. We lose players. We've got to get excitement going.
Is the rule the same in Quebec?
Oh, the rule, the one-team rule in Quebec has been there for as long as I've been around, 20 years.
And how has that affected high school and minor football?
It's, again, the stronger programs tend to do well. In Gatineau, for example, everyone says, you guys should have 3 or 4 teams. And I say, well, hold on. In my area of Quebec, there's 14 high school teams. And there's us. There's 11 high school teams for 1 million people. There's 14 high school teams for 300,000 people.
Wow.
So we struggle. We lose a lot of players, but it's a free market. Kids are going to go where they want to go, and I'm fine with that. Let's make this product the best product we can make.
Well, we just took a huge leapfrog step here with this because the power rankings having North Shore at number 2 in the midget division, and Norseman number 1. That I would only think if I'm a coach for a Norseman or a player. The stakes just got upped a lot. We have an unknown guy that's on the heels of this undefeated Norseman team. The pressure's on to actually say, okay, you're going to, you went undefeated this season. They got one more game, and Kyle will probably be able to tell me who they're playing next. Is it Norseman? Who are they playing this weekend?
Norseman this weekend, they're playing.
But if they're playing the Bengals, we could probably assume that that's going to be another win for them. They're going to go undefeated.
Norsemen are going to have to get some real have to really thrive or just absolutely dominate at the skill positions against a Quebec team, I think. Otherwise, I don't think they're going to have a lot of success. We saw them against the Nepean Eagles on Showcase Day, and both offenses looked a little wanting.
Well, I think if you look at the midget league this year, the true quarterback probably in that whole division is the Myers quarterback who played with you, Avery.
In the Quebec League.
In the Quebec League. And, so I look at Myers. They're a threat. I think they could turn it on in the playoffs. Anything can happen. We've seen this year after year. Like, Norseman is probably got to be very careful because – the Giants last weekend gave them a run for their money. They were about 3 quarters. They were coming back. They started to get their offense going. They maybe just ran out of time, and they could have beat the Norsemen last weekend. So this puts some extra pressure that, yes, getting through the City League is one thing and winning a midget championship here, but then you've got to also you're working towards this bowl game where you've got to prepare, because if like Gowan said, if you underestimate these guys, there'd be nothing worse than just getting whooped in this game. Like,
Which is the same thing, like you said. I mean, drawing a conclusion to the 72 hockey series, it's really, really interesting. As far as I know, this is the first time that provincial borders have been crossed between Ontario and Quebec. Is this going to be the model for other minor football associations across the country to perhaps put together something that may resemble a national championship?
Well, I know they tried it a few years ago. It was Litzen Bowl, I think it was, right? And it didn't really work. And I personally think that this model in Ottawa, where we always look at Toronto for our OVFL.
They are the center of the universe. Just ask them.
But we've got this huge metropolitan region down the street. I think it's, the sixth largest metropolitan region in North America, right? There's 3 million people in there. And we're not doing anything with them.
And they're 2 hours down the road.
2 hours down the road. So if I was going to run a club, like for me to go to Montreal for a game, it's like $600 or $700 for a bus. If I want to go to Toronto, I'm tripling or doubling that, right? Depending on the day, because now I need a coach, I need all this kind of stuff. So I don't know if it can be replicated elsewhere, but I know that this should be an example. So I don't know if Calgary Edmonton has something like this.
Right.
I don't know, right? Maybe Manitoba, someone else. Who knows?
Manitoba, Saskatchewan.
Right? Exactly. But wouldn't it be great if we could get our schedules on sync, where the winner of this, you will call it Eastern Canada Bowl, maybe gets to play someone from the West at a mini Grey Cup.
Well, for that to occur, and I think that's the right thing we want. What I think that the game has kind of gone through in the last little while is these showcase combine type things where, people, the Ontario Prospects Challenge, they're getting kids to come in, they're trying to sell it like it's a big event and that you're going to get a lot of exposure. Yeah. At the end of the day, the thing that's great about football is that you're put together with a bunch of kids from a neighborhood. Yeah. You're made to dedicate yourself to this team, make it as good as you can, fill in a role wherever you're best suited to be a role, put a team together, go through a season together, do what you can. If you're lucky enough to be on the championship side of that season, then you get to play another team. I think what we're doing is we're actually making an event with like the way football was designed and meant to be played. So not an all-star team, like the team that you have from your neighborhood. So we took a team. Last thing I'll say about it, we took a team down to the Challenge Wilson, Spalding Cup in Montreal. And Dan Lachance, who's president of...
Which is a summer league.
It's a summer tournament. It's a one-week tournament. Regional teams from Quebec. So the all-star team of the Montreal Regional Football League was there, for example, and a few other leagues and high school leagues. I'll tell you something. Dan, who's a big OVFL guy and now is the OPFL, we played that first team from Montreal Metro, and he said, this is the best U15 team I've ever seen. Period. This team would win the OPFL, hands down. There you go. That's how strong they were. They were 55 kids deep.
Wow.
And when you play the North Shore this year, they're not coming with 12 kids. They're going to be 45 to 50 players who can all play football. Nice. So we better be ready. That's all I'll say. You hear that, Norseman? We better be ready.
Should be a great day. Gowan Harding, thanks so much for dropping by. Really pleasure talking to you, and we look forward to seeing how our kids are going to do against Quebec.
This is a challenge.
The Quebec Bowl goes November 18th at Carleton University. The best Pee-wee, Bantam, and Midget football players from the National Capital Amateur Football Association and Quebec go at it at Carleton University. Don't go anywhere, folks. Kyle Ball is coming back with our NCAFA Power Rankings after the break. Welcome back to the HESN Football Podcast, number 23. Dan Mooney, Jesse Card, Steve Johnston, and Kyle Ball is joining us now with our Uncafa Power Rankings. But you saw the Madden 18. Flash that again, Steve. So there, right there, we're putting on a Madden tournament. Pre-registration is now open. So if you think you're any good, here's your opportunity to show your stuff.
Are you playing?
No, I'm not very good.
Are you in?
I'm not very good.
Well, you can still play.
I'm not very good.
You got paired up with a 13-year-old.
Yeah, well, that guy will be carrying me for sure.
Kyle, are you playing?
Yeah, I'm in.
I'm in too. I haven't played the new Madden. I think the last one I had was 2015 maybe, but I'm going to give it a go, and some kid will wipe the snot out of me, and then on they go to the next round.
Some kid will get an easy first round bye, and that'll be that.
Yeah, that's it.
We'll have a good time.
I'm pumped. We're still figuring out a lot about it. We're reading, we're learning from some other tournaments, and they were collecting like the way they've done it. But at the end of the day, when we do set it up, it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun, and we're figuring out how to do this more often and keeping kids engaged in the off season, keeping the conversation going about football all year long. We want to keep the HESN Football Podcast going in the off season. And we want to, we're going to be starting a hockey podcast and a basketball podcast and a soccer podcast, maybe a baseball podcast. So a lot of good stuff happening with HESN and the Madden tournament. So if anyone is interested in playing in that, we're probably doing a smaller scale one to start just to work out some of the kinks, and it's filling up really quick. We've had over 65 pre-registrations already, and I think we're looking at capping at about 100. And we still got about 6 weeks to go before we close pre-reg. So
all I can say is that you can't just bring a game; you got to bring your A game.
Yeah.
To a tournament like that, for sure.
No doubt.
Speaking of A games, lots of teams in Uncafa starting to heat up. Kyle, let's start with the Tyke division.
Teams starting to get ready for the A-Cup playoffs. All the divisions except Midget had their final games before the playoffs, so we got the playoff matchups set in most of the divisions except Tyke and Midget, and we'll get to those. Tyke 6v6, the rankings stay the same. Bell Warriors retain the number 1 spot. East Ottawa Generals number 2. West Carleton Wolverines number 3. Generals beat the Riders 49-12. Wolverines 28-18 over the Lions. And 32-6 Warriors over the Mustangs. Now the playoff matchups we got in here. All 6 teams make the A-Cup playoffs, and the top 2 have a bye. So
Now, just remind everybody the age group. Is this 8 and 9-year-olds?
I believe, yeah.
8 and 9-year-olds in the Tyke division, and Bell right up there, number 1, a spot they've occupied for most of the season.
Yes, they have, but that's only the spot in my power rankings. They don't have that spot in the standings. In the standings, they're the number 3 seed, and they'll have to play the Myers Riders this week.
What's the criteria that you use within your algorithm to select who gets the number 1 seed?
So it goes based on win percentage. Win percentage is the biggest factor. You get twice as many points in the system for that, and then points for per game, points against, the difference, and finally your opponent's winning percentage. So according to the algorithm, if I pull it up here real quick, I don't mean to bore everyone with the numbers, but Tyke.
And you know what? I also say that the parents online for the Tyke divisions are so into this. The power rankings are coming out. They're the first people to like it, share it. They're commenting. Cornwall is getting the power rankings into the local newspaper in Cornwall.
Wow.
Every single week. Orleans.ca, I think, is picking up on this. Everyone's really excited to see these little kids play and finish out the season.
Yep. Yeah, I
And-
can't wait to check out some playoff games for these guys.
Kids that go through a wall for sure. Okay, let's move up to Mosquito.
Nope, Tyke 10v10.
Tyke 10v10.
Can't forget about the tennis side.
Oh, excuse me. And Cumberland up there at the top.
Yep, Cumberland holds on to their number 1 spot.
What a great program the Panthers have going, isn't it?
It was a pleasure coaching there. They have it really organized well. They should, other clubs can look at what Cumberland's doing in terms of getting a volunteer base. A lot of people that divide the labor up, and
Well, they do have the numbers out there to support that.
And not
they
sure-
do. But I think they have the numbers because they put a good program together. It's a chicken and egg thing, right?
maybe.
And not just at the Tyke division. Cumberland's a great organization.
All the way through.
Divisions.
Oh, yeah, well, provincial champions.
Yep.
Indeed.
Yeah, no,
OPFL, yeah.
We ordered our rings.
Oh, were you part of that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I was the DB coach.
With Jeff Karate and the rest of the staff, and what a great football club you put together last summer.
Well, those kids, you know what? That was just an ultimate team win, you know, not to steal the power rankings, but I would just say that was a perfect example of a 5-3 team. We went 1-3 to start the season. We moved people around. We rallied. We believed in ourselves, and we came through in a real dramatic game.
Yep.
Cornwall drops to 4th from 3rd.
Yeah, they ran into the tough Panthers team and they lost 43-0.
Ouch.
Couple close matchups. The Eagles defeated the Vikings 57-38, and the Raiders defeated the Giants 33-26.
57-38. They must have been a score every time the ball was touched.
It happens.
And there's one matchup remaining in this division, Raiders versus Vikings tonight, and that will help determine the final playoff seeding. So after tonight, we'll have the final playoff matchup set for the Tyke division.
Raiders versus Vikings. You know that Gatineau is going to be up for that one.
Yep, for sure.
All right, let's go to Mosquito.
Make it into the playoffs and come make some noise.
So we go to Mosquito, and 14 teams in the power rankings, and the Cornwall Wildcats. That's the team that you just mentioned, Jesse. The parents are really living up to that team nickname. They are wild about these Wildcats, aren't they, Kyle?
Yeah, I've been to a couple Wildcats games down in Cornwall and here in the Ottawa area, and their fans travel. I mean, they're some of the loudest fans I've seen in this league, and they know how to cheer on their team.
Cornwall is producing some good football players, and you know, it's unfortunate that you don't get to see them in the Wildcats uniforms towards the end of their careers, because at that point they're either playing for the Cumberland Panthers in the OPFL, or they're going to high school in Cornwall and playing. I know that Cornwall struggles with the bantam and midget division because of the Cornwall high school system out there. But like we just talked about with the bowl games, I mean, now kids are actually, things are changing. The media support that we have, the power rankings, the live coverage, all this stuff. I think in 5 years you're going to see a major shift of kids playing in the NCAFA league, where, you know, paying respect to what I call the federation. We all came from it. Like, people like to throw rocks at it, but at the end of the day, listen, I'm a NCAFA player, produced. We have the community that we bring people back into it, and you know, Kyle's an example of a guy coming back to the city, reaching out to the league, and boom, there's a place for him.
Products of the Federation, live long and prosper. Let's go to Pee Wee.
All right, so on to Pee Wee. Now this gets interesting, because now we have some of these new Quebec teams in here that people aren't used to seeing, and so this is the Montreal Regional Football League. So we took their top 6 teams who are likely heading to the playoffs there, and sort of looked at all the numbers yesterday and figured where would they slot in against our guys.
They've got 3 to 6 locked up.
Yeah, the Chateauguay Raiders, they come in with an 8-1 record. Sherbrooke 8-1, Il Blizzard Vikings, they're all 8-1. But the one thing that sort of handicaps them is the win percentage, or their opponent's strength of schedule. So you take the win percentage of all their opponents combined, and for all 3 of those teams, it's under 39%. So they're playing a pretty easy schedule, and who knows how that might affect them against us.
Look at this. We got Billy Bean sitting here with us.
He's a numbers guy for sure. The Orleans Bengals have the number 1 ranking this week from number 2. Myers dropping to number 2 from the top spot.
Yeah, some people aren't happy about that because Myers finished the season undefeated at 8-0. The Orleans Bengals were 7-1. The Myers Riders beat the Orleans Bengals, but once again, it's strength of schedule. The Orleans Bengals had the 2nd easiest schedule in the league compared to the 5th toughest for Orleans, so that's what gives them the extra boost up to the number 1 spot.
Okay, the Bantam rankings, things heating up in the Bantam division, and boy, is that ever going to be a great Quebec Bowl game between the winner of NCAFA and the winner of Montreal.
Yeah, you notice the new number 2 team, the Barons de Saint Bruno. They come in with a 9-0 record. They've scored 257 points, only allowed 62.
Wow.
Sun Youth Hornets 7-2, and the one team that I want to point out is the number 10 there. They may be the lowest ranked Quebec team, the North Shore Lions. They have a 6-3 record, but They've been around for 50 years, and they've won 37 provincial championships.
Well, what
yeah.
what folks might be seeing on these rankings is the fact that a lot of the Ottawa teams are moving to the bottom of the pile. That doesn't necessarily mean that these teams are going to be out of the running, does it?
No, all the teams from Ottawa that are on these rankings are the ones that are in the A-Cup bracket. So they all have a chance to move on to the A-Cup final and could end up playing one of these Quebec teams.
But it's not going to be easy to get to that A-Cup. Just because we're adding another layer here at the end of the season, winning an A-Cup's a big deal. To be fortunate enough to have the right team and the right coaches at the right time and actually produce a team that can go on to the A-Cup and win one.
Yep.
I mean, getting to the game is one thing, but actually winning it is tough.
Yep.
So, we don't, there's still quite a bit of football to be played here, and we don't know if Cumberland's going to be the team.
Right. And looking at, I was moderating the live chat while you guys were talking with Gowan, and there's a lot of Canada Knights players who are saying they're the ones who are going to be challenging Cumberland.
Well, we saw them play Cumberland. We saw that early on they had some bad luck. They turned the ball over twice in the first quarter.
Yep.
We know that you can't give Cumberland the ball. They're going to score. It's just a matter of keeping pace with them. And I will say that the Canada O-line, they look like tough guys, and they have a really tough running back.
Yep.
So if he stays healthy, if they make a few adjustments on defense, they could very well be the A-Cup contender here.
Yep. And looking at just some of the playoff matchups for Bantam this week, we have the Panthers have to play the Myers Riders, the Knights are playing the Raiders, the Warriors are playing the Lions, and the Red Blacks are playing the Eagles. Now, I was talking to some of the Knights players, and they said their coach is preaching, don't assume you'll run over the 4-4 GS Raiders when the Knights are 7-1, which is some great advice. I mean, you don't ever want to overlook an opponent, especially in the playoffs.
Oh, that would be just the death knell
Yep.
for any team to go in overconfident.
Yep.
Absolutely.
No team should be looking ahead to Cumberland except who are they playing? They're playing the Myers Riders. Riders should be the only ones concerned about Cumberland right now.
Classic matchup, too.
Yep.
1-14. Perfect opportunity to be a giant killer.
Yep, for sure.
Yep.
And now let's check out the midget division finally. So here we got the Bel Air Norsemen, and you guys mentioned the North Shore Mustangs showing up on the doorstep at number 2. We got the Greenfield Park Packers, Sun Youth Hornets. North Shore, they're 9-0, 31 points per game, only allowing 7 points a game. 26-time provincial champion, so that North Shore organization is...
So the interesting thing here to me is that the 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 spots have just completely pushed the Ottawa teams out and to the bottom.
Yep.
We saw the Giants play the Norsemen last week, and they came pretty close.
Yeah, all 3 matchups in the midget division this past week were real close.
There was a touchdown dropped in the end zone there. I mean, I've seen that with the Giants. They've dropped a few touchdowns this year. They're going to need to be on their game, but they still very much believe that they are going to be the team to knock off the Norsemen. The Eagles still has potential.
And that's understandable, Kyle, because they've had such a rough season with all of their equipment being stolen, a big push to get the community back involved in making sure that these kids get an opportunity to play football. And boy, these are the kids that have something to prove. Yeah, you're going to take this away from us? I don't think so.
So check this out. I was filming the game when the Giants played Norsemen at home, and let me just show you the way that they entered. And look at what Jeff Woodhouse and Yola is doing. I mean, they are doing some awesome stuff. And when this got a lot of views, and I think it's because look at this entrance that they have. They had the cheerleaders. They've got the clubhouse, obviously. They had a smoke bomb and a flag going. They enter the field with blue smoke accompanying them. And this team is a confident group. I think that if they can get their offense, they're starting to kind of click. But here's the thing. You mentioned the Eagles. One thing I noticed, I was watching the highlights that Kyle put together. The Eagles have put Dante Blizzard in at quarterback now. So they've changed. And we talked about that at the showcase. Mm-hmm. They don't have a true quarterback, number 28, playing there.
Right.
They've now moved their slot receiver, Dante, who won in, he's a guy who's won the A-Cup before. His dad's coaching, Carlos, with the Eagles. They brought in the OC from the Raiders Bantam team that won the A-Cup last year, and he's calling the plays. They're still very much tweaking their engine, and we might see a completely different Eagles team in the playoffs compared to what we've seen this year.
Well, one thing about the Eagles is they have not locked up their playoff spot yet. So we have the Norsemen, the Riders, and the Giants, they've all locked up their A Cup ticket. But this weekend, there's still one game for each of the midget teams. Eagles are playing the Knights for the final playoff spot. But for the Knights, it's going to be tough. They have to win, and they have to win by at least 40 to take the fourth playoff spot.
Right.
So it's going to be Norsemen will play whoever gets that fourth spot, and the Riders and Giants are already locked up for playoffs.
Yeah, I hate to say it. I think Canada's kind of just running the season out. I don't think that they're going to do anything. And now we're looking at some other teams like North Shore, Greenfield, Sun Youth. I mean, these are the teams now that the Norsemen and the Giants and maybe the Riders and the Eagles need to be worrying about.
Yep.
And Canada not even in the top 10.
Well, even though they're not on the list, Canada and the Bengals, they had a great game over the weekend. The Bengals put up 5 times as many points as they did all season. Unfortunately, they still lost by a score of 40-30.
We saw them earlier this year, and
Week
they
one.
were really, week 1, and they were really, really hurting because of the fact that they just didn't have enough players. I think they came into the game with 22.
And it's been the same all year, and Canada lost a bunch of players too. So both of those teams are just kind of from an organizational standpoint, they're struggling with numbers. It is what it is. But, I mean, in terms of we're talking about A Cup and Midget City Championship football here, the real teams that have a shot here are Norsemen, obviously. The Giants, I think, can surprise people.
I think it's going to be the Riders who are going to end up playing in the final.
They look good too, That's the thing. We saw them play the Eagles this week.
Yep.
And like I said, they have the true quarterback. They have a very good quarterback, and I think Oliver is playing. He's a linebacker, and he's playing, and he's getting the job done because he's just a really intelligent football player. And he won an A Cup as a quarterback last year in Bantam. He won a provincial championship as a linebacker. Yep. He's just an all-around football player, and he'll do whatever is necessary to win. But he's not a quarterback, and he's playing for the Giants. The Norsemen.
But he won an A Cup last year as a quarterback.
He did, yeah, because he understands football and he knows how to get the job done. And we're seeing him. We saw him play the Eagles in Barhaven. We saw him play the Norsemen, and in those 2 games, there's 3 touchdowns dropped. He was placing the ball perfectly in the back of the end zone on the guy's hands, and they dropped it. Yep. So Oliver is doing the job, but he's not like really a true quarterback. And we saw at the Norsemen, they lost their quarterback to Franco Cite.
Right. And
now they've got a new guy in there. So, and he's not a true quarterback. He's a guy that's stepping in and getting the job done. But I feel like you're right. The Riders have the potential to put it together. I think they're a couple pieces, away from being a lot better of a team.
Yep. And that's the beautiful thing about playoffs. It's a one game.
Yeah.
You move on. And I know I was getting some heat from Kyle Prince of the Canada Knights, and because they were asking for my predictions, and I said for Bantam it was going to be the Eagles and the Panthers. And he said, "What do you have against the Knights?" I'm like, "Nothing. I just like picking underdogs sometimes." So anything can happen come the playoffs.
Well, I'm sure that the Eagles would be happy to hear that vote of confidence.
Yep, for sure.
Playoffs begin next week?
Playoffs begin this weekend in all the divisions except midget.
All the divisions except midget. So things heating up in the National Capital Amateur Football Association. Kyle Ball, thanks very much for your input and your insight. Always welcome here on the podcast. Jesse Card, thanks very much. You are a permanent fixture around here.
You can't get rid of me, unfortunately.
No, it's not that we wouldn't want to either. Steve Johnston, our producer, is here. He unfortunately started to talk, but his mic didn't work, and and he's a little frustrated, but we love you anyway, Steve. So just put that in your pipe and light that one up. Anyway, I'm Dan Mooney. Thanks so much for joining us here for HESN podcast number 23. We'll see you again next Wednesday. Thanks so much for the company. So long.
Peace.